Good afternoon, one and all present here. I am Priyanshu Pandey, and I will be introducing everyone out here for the fifth session named Pakistan's Pashtun Conundrum, State-Sponsored Terror and the Rise of Pashtun Tahafuz Movement. It is my honor to introduce the distinguished participants of the session, with the session chair being Miss Levsa Bayankhail. She is the convener of the Pashtun Security Dialogue at the Indic Researchers Forum and member of International Advocacy Committee of Pashtun Tahafuz Movement. She regularly writes for various platforms such as the Sunday Guardian, DSA Magazine, and many other portals. Welcome, ma'am. Our first key speaker for the segment is Dr. Shalini Chawla. Dr. Shalini Chawla is a distinguished fellow at the Center of Air Power Studies, New Delhi. She is a research scholar at IDSA, working from 1999 to 2002. She worked as a freelance defense analyst from 2003 to 2005 in Colombo, Sri Lanka. She later joined CAPS in 2006, and the focus of her studies is Pakistan. Currently, she heads the Afghanistan and Pakistan Studies program at CAPS. She has received a commendation and badge by the Chief of Air Staff in October 2020 for displaying great dedication and professional ability, resulting in praiseworthy contributions towards the service. She's a visiting faculty at the Naval War College, Goa. She is part of the Pakistan study group coordinated by the Vivekananda International Foundation at New Delhi and has authored 7 books. The second speaker that we have for the segment uh, is Zia-ul Hamdard at Pashtun Tahafuz movement. He's a journalist, human rights activist, and academic from Pakistan based in United Kingdom. He has worked with Pakistan Television, Radio Pakistan, and German Academic Exchange, Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, UKS, and other media and human rights organizations in different capacities. He is a lecturer in journalism and mass communication and currently pursuing his PhD in communication, media, and cultural studies at Solent University, UK. He is writing his thesis on role of social media in circumventing state censorship and political activism, a case study of Pashtun Tahafuz movement. Our final speaker for the session is Dr. Asif Kamal. He's a postdoctoral fellow, Northwest Fellow at the University of Politics and Law, Shaanxi, China. He'll be speaking on the topic Exploitation of Natural Resources in Pashtun Areas. With this, I hand over the floor to the session chair. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Priyanshu, for the kind introduction. I welcome you all for the fifth session, Pakistan Pashtun Conundrum, State-Sponsored Terror and Pashtun Tahafuz Movement. First of all, please accept my sincere apology that I'm not fluent in English language as it is my third language after Pashto and Danish. Please pardon my pronunciation. As Priyanshu has already said, I am the convener of Pashtun Security Dialogue at the Indic Researcher Forum. The idea of our security dialogue is to bring together expert practitioners to deliberate and strategize the policy and for an equal, safe future of for the Pashtuns, and at the same time focus on the stability of the region. Since its inception, the Pakistani state has leveraged religion as a binder for the ethnically and culturally diverse population. It has taken over the legacy of the British Empire through its discriminatory state policy, especially when confronted with the regional aspiration and demand for parity with the Punjab from the other provinces. This approach has significantly failed, as it was witnessed in the case of East Pakistan in 1971. The Pakistani army continues the same colonial approach while dealing with the aspiration of the Pashtuns and Baloch. The use of the terrorism by the army has not only destabilized the region, but also destroyed several generations of Pashtuns. The Pakistani state has successfully portrayed Pashtun as extremists while whitewashing its own genocide committed against Pashtun Baloch, and Bengalis. GHQ is the base of all terror activities in the region, as Manzoor Pashtun says, "Ye jo dahshatgardi hai, iske piche wardi hai." This very much defines the reality of the Pakistani state. Today, we have come here to discuss the political, economic, and security dynamic in Pakistan-Afghan region. Without further delay, I will invite our esteemed speakers for decision. First of all, we have Dr. Shalini Chawla, who is an expert on the Pakistan-Afghanistan region. She is going to speak on the Taliban 2.0 and the emerging dynamic between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Dr. Shalini, over to you.
Thank you so much. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you, India Research Forum, and thank you, Yashas, for inviting me here. It's an interesting discussion and a very, very timely discussion because once again, the region is witnessing India-Pakistan crisis, which could escalate, challenging the regional dynamics, which are anyway not very stable. You all will agree. We have issues in Bangladesh. We also had issues in Maldives. Sri Lanka went through an economic default. And Pakistan obviously has been dealing with a multidimensional crisis. And then we have a new normal with Taliban 2.0. So I'll be talking to you about from how do we see the Taliban 2.0 and how do we see the evolving dynamics between Pakistan and Afghanistan, because to my mind, the relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan to a large extent defines the stability in Pakistan and Afghanistan both. And Afghanistan definitely, this is one act. Pakistan remains very central to its stability. Coming to the Taliban 2.0, so over the last 3+ years, what we have seen with the Taliban regime after the US exit in 2021, there have been curious, I would say, evolution of strategic security and political dynamics in Afghanistan, which has not only brought in a new normal for the global community, but will also have complex regional implications, as I feel. The Taliban, as we all know, have very much monopolized power. They have moved from an insurgent movement to a functional government. There have been reports regarding fissures amongst the Taliban top brass, but power appears to remain consolidated under the leadership of the supreme leader in Kandahar. Also, what I feel that this time in this phase, Taliban very much realize the power of unity. So there are divisions and reports that we keep hearing about the divisions, but those are not allowed to surface or at least impact the cohesiveness of the group. And there is a realization that the lack of unity will definitely lead to disaster. So there is the cohesiveness has been maintained. The situation within Afghanistan, according to the World Bank report, there are indications of meek economic recovery, but 50% of the households struggle to remain their livelihood and access to meet their basic needs. The country remains highly dependent on the external financial assistance. Economic and humanitarian challenges are there, which definitely question the, I would say, long-term survival of the state. So Taliban, what we see 2.0 have evolved in terms of their willingness to stay connected to the world. And they are using the traditional and the social media to appeal for recognition across the globe. But there is limited evolution in terms of Taliban's thinkings and policy, and most importantly, women rights for education and work. Even though the international community continues to assert its concern over women rights and education, I don't think anything much has changed with the Taliban. Now, this is Taliban 2.0, which wants to be connected to the world. It wants to be heard. And in a way, you can also sense there is a desperation for recognition. They also realize that their relevance now, I think. The situation today is different globally, and there are stakes that the major powers, the regional powers, have in Kabul, and I think the Taliban is pretty much aware of it. And Taliban, in their current position, have managed to develop varied dynamics in their external relations. And I think this is a very important aspect which one needs to look into very deeply when we are talking about how this whole evolving situation is going to impact the region. And these are the aspects which are very different from what we saw Taliban in the 1990s and what we are seeing Taliban like 2.0 now. The prime interests which are driving the engagement of the regional powers in Afghanistan, to my mind, are four. First is the thought process that Taliban has clearly managed to win a superpower and has come to power on its own terms and conditions. This is certainly critical, and the regional powers understand this. The military victory against the Taliban is not feasible, and this is the understanding which is definitely there in the regional powers. Then there are strategic interests which all these powers have: China, Russia, India, given the location of Afghanistan and its potential for connectivity. Economic interests, yes, we see how China has been, investing there. It is investing in the Ainak copper mine, and there you see Chinese economic interests in Afghanistan. And fourthly, and very importantly, are the security interests which all the regional powers engaged in Kabul do have. They have security concerns related to the Islamic State Khorasan province. So we see this concern with Russia. We see a very significant concern that China carries, that it doesn't want this to, be proliferated into the Xinjiang province. And even Iran does share this concern, that it doesn't want its territory to be impacted by the Islamic State. And India definitely has its own security concerns, which it has been, dealing with, and it wants those to be catered in its relationship with the Taliban. Now, looking into the regional and the major powers engagement with the Taliban 2.0, obviously the US remains the largest aid provider till now, although the aid has shrunk. We also saw a US delegation led by Khalilzad, who went to Kabul for the release of the US tourists there. And then there were some reports that the US is talking about, allowing getting the Bagram base and let the equipment be with the Taliban. But those were reports, but nothing significant has come out of it post that. China rejoiced at the Taliban takeover post 2021. And it frequently and very enthusiastically expresses its willingness for economic commitment, as we have seen. The optics which China creates in terms of its relationship or its interests with the Taliban are very significant. And it has invested money. What I feel is that the Beijing has been guarded and pragmatic in its engagement with Afghanistan, catering to its strategic and security objectives. So it is engaged, but it is guarded in that approach, and the optics are much more than the actual engagement, is my assessment. Russia sees the Taliban as a stable partner in the evolving regional security dynamics, and Taliban, on the other hand, I feel they see Russia as a attractive trade partner. India has reestablished its engagement with Kabul. It has started its engagement with the Taliban, but it's very cautious. The engagement right now is limited to humanitarian assistance. We opened our embassy in June last year, no, 2022. And then we have been, steady but very slow in our approach, and we have a technical mission there. And India definitely wants to guard its strategic and security concerns. And it also does not want its past efforts, the amount of investment it had done in Afghanistan, close to about $3 billion, the goodwill it created, the soft power which it, managed to build up. And also it was engaged in over 500 projects. So it doesn't want that engagement to go waste, definitely. So it is present there, but it is currently limited to the humanitarian assistance. Now coming to the Pakistan-Afghanistan relations, which is, to my mind, is the most crucial relationship for Afghanistan's stability. And sitting here, I am talking about the Taliban 2.0, Pakistan, Afghanistan. These are the bilateral relationships which I feel how in the larger context this will impact the region and what are the trends that we are going to see here. So Pakistan-Afghanistan relation, obviously very critical. And before I delve into this, I think like to start with what's happening in Pakistan and how do we see the developments. At the moment we see India-Pakistan tensions are on the peak with the Pahalgam attack. Much has been talked about it in the previous session. I logged in because I wanted to hear that, how much has been covered there. But what is happening within Pakistan definitely has an implication on how it deals with Afghanistan. So let me just talk a little bit about how I see these trends in these, emerging trends within Pakistan. So the country has gone through long phase of instability. Some parts are still there. So political instability was very prolonged. Economic, it's settled down a little bit, but still Imran Khan off and on, keeps making the noises. Economy numbers are a little bit better. But is that sustainable? I don't think so, because by and large, those numbers right now are reflective of the IMF related measures, and also a lot of debts which have been rolled off. But overall, can this growth be sustained? We need to think about it. And then the security issue, aspect has been very challenging with the TTP's continuous attack. There has been deep polarization in the society, and clearly there is a pro-Imran and anti-Imran groups that we saw at all levels. Then the breakdown of the democracy, the elections 2024, the way it was conducted was very evident that democracy has obviously suffered there, and people's voice was not something which was reflected in the vote bank. Military's control has been strengthened. We have seen how the 26th Amendment, Military Act, and then the Official Secret Act. And also, very importantly, Pakistan's military's morale has been down with 500 plus attacks which took place in 2024. Baluchistan, we have seen that the situation worsened. Pashtun nationalism is strong as ever, and it's been challenging for the military to counter that. And very importantly, apart from all these trends that I talked, I think the most important part here is that Pakistan at this point in time seems to have a very deep feeling that it has lost its strategic relevance. After the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, because this being strategically relevant is something that Pakistan cherished for decades. It has been a US ally in multiple phases, but what we saw in the last 3-4 years, that Pakistan has had that feeling of loss of that strategic relevance with the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, US being focused on the Indo-Pacific strategy. Pakistan doesn't have a place in the Indo-Pacific strategy. Pakistan's alliance with China, and very importantly, rise of India, its diplomatic and economic posture. So I think this loss of strategic relevance has been a very critical aspect in the overall issues that we see in Pakistan. Now, Pakistan remains the most critical actor in the stability of Afghanistan, I feel, and both Islamabad and Taliban have mutual stakes in the relationship. So let me dwell into past a little bit, as it's critical to understand, and as I saw the theme of the conference, there is a lot of history that's been discussed. So I just wanted to bring in some part of history here and discuss, link it to what is happening right now. So undoubtedly, Pakistan has been overly obsessed with the desire to gain so-called strategic depth in Afghanistan. The military and the ISI, which authored and executed the policy of strategic depth since the 1980s through the 1990s, when they strongly backed the Taliban, believe in having strong control over Afghanistan, and that's been there. At no stage was the policy of strategic depth logical or viable for Pakistan. And its adoption of this doctrine of strategic depth is considered a strategic blunder, actually, which I feel has actually facilitated Pakistan's drift into extremism. It has not allowed Pakistan to even consider countering its strategic calculus. Now, in Pakistan's perception, the strategic depth policy in the past allowed it to maintain a conventional balance against India. But on the other hand, the policy of strategic depth has made the tribal areas of Pakistan, the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, actually, like kind of, you would say, areas where terrorism really flourished, and militancy and extremism perhaps right now are, at a much, I feel it's at the peak at right now. But what is strategic depth? And this concept of strategic depth has been interpreted differently by different policymakers, authors. But broadly, I think there are two approaches that can be classified. So first, and a more traditional approach to the concept of strategic depth is, as it is understood in the pure military literature. A strategic depth, according to this interpretation, is the distance between the battle sectors and the combatants' capital cities, industrial areas, defense production units, and other units of strategic importance. Now, the military planners need to calculate the vulnerability of these assets in case of a military offensive. The creation of strategic depth will allow the country forces to move back deeper into their own territory, absorb the offensive thrust of the enemy short of his military objectives, and maybe also apply power on the vulnerability of attacking military. So when it is in this concept is interpreted in military terms, it has three offshoots. First is where the combatant seeks strategic depth in its own territory. Second, when the state seeks strategic depth in a neighboring country, extending its control in the foreign territory. And the state is thus able to trade territory for a better partner. And third, when the state decides to create buffer states at its border. I think Pakistan went in for the second objective, where it wanted to seek strategic depth in Afghanistan. But the strategic depth is not only geographical, it could also have an ideological connotation, which we also see those glimpses in Pakistan. And strategic depth in the past has been used by China, by Russia. During the Cold War, Central Asian republics did provide Russia strategic depth. So the second approach of strategic depth is ideological and religious, where the state tries to extend its control and influence by spreading ideology. And in this context, I think China was spreading communist socialist ideology for extending its control can be well understood. And what we saw in case of Pakistan, what it did in Afghanistan with its concept of strategic depth, that it adopted a mix of both military and ideological approach in order to gain that strategic depth in Afghanistan. And if one has to trace the events and the evolution of Pakistan's policies and actions in order to gain strategic depth, both the approaches can be seen parallel for Pakistan. It has perpetually sought a so-called friendly government or a pro-Pakistan government in Kabul. But ironically, the relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan have always been scarred by turbulence, mistrust. So I'm not going to go into details of these, but one can presume that the desire for this strategic depth would have started to mature after Pakistan's defeat in 1971 war, where it did lose a significant portion of the military assets. And 1971 war, I think, was discussed in great detail in the previous session, what I could hear. Now, at no stage was strategic depth really viable for Pakistan, neither militarily nor ideologically. But yes, Pakistan went for it. And by using the term strategic depth, when I did a whole project on this, and what I felt that by using this term strategic depth, Pakistan actually was seeking rationalization of their control and influence in Afghanistan for the number of reasons. And what were those reasons? I think four of them. One and the most important factors determining Pakistan's policy in Afghanistan has been the lingering Pakistan-Afghanistan border issue based on Durand Line. And we all know that no Afghan regime, including the Rabbani government, has ever accepted the legitimacy of the border drawn by the British in 1893. So this definitely has been an issue, and it was very clear that the Afghan regime would not recognize the agreement, and it seeks to incorporate the Pashtun areas east of the Durand Line into Afghanistan. Secondly, Pakistan has faced the issue of Pashtun nationalism, and in its own mind, control and influence over Afghanistan by the Pashtun-dominated government would therefore reduce this demand and contain this nationalism, help Pakistan to contain this nationalism. Then, obviously, Afghanistan provided Pakistan as a safe haven to train the anti-India groups, which we have seen the reports. And fourthly, and very importantly, undermining India's influence in Afghanistan has been always a priority for Pakistan, and Islamabad always viewed actions in Afghanistan as a policy to encircle viewed India's action in Afghanistan as a policy of encirclement. So in their own mind, Taliban would help to cut down India's role in the region. And the last aspect, which I feel that, very importantly, by using the normally not very well understood terminology, which is a strategic depth, it also sounds impressive, and Pakistan leadership felt that it could influence the public opinion to support its policy. Now, if the strategic depth strategy was successful, I don't think so, because none of the objectives that Pakistan started with his whole doctrine of strategic depth, could be achieved. Taliban today does not recognize the Durand Line. The fence has been challenged. India is certainly back in Afghanistan with its engagement there. Pashtun nationalism obviously is there, and Pakistan military faces that challenge of containing, despite the fact that they have tried to use all brute force and all kind of tactic means. So I feel that, Pakistan, although in the last few years it has said that there's nothing called strategic depth, but yes, the terminology has changed, but the objectives in Afghanistan have not changed. So their whole concept has not changed, even if they don't use the term strategic depth. The Durand Line factor is still lingering. Pashtun nationalism is not less. Pakistan is engaged in full-blooded insurgency. And then as I said, India is definitely back and engaged with the Taliban. Pakistan has talked about changes in their Afghan policy, but there are contradictions in Pakistan's position and what it says and what it does, and it's not clear which route it really wants to adopt. Now, what we saw post 2021, after the Taliban came into power, we saw Pakistan really rejoice the territory, and in their own mind, they had won a major they saw it as a strategic victory. But then the relations have been strained very severely, and multiple factors. Firstly, obviously, Taliban's reluctance to recognize the Durand Line, which Pakistan thought that they would be able to manage that. Then intensifying attacks by the TTP, which Pakistan has continuously blamed Taliban for that. And also, I think Pakistan's inability to drive recognition for the Taliban at the global level. There has been continuous blame game between the two neighbors. So the policy that we do see some different approach now with the high level visits happening, but by and large, if one has to broadly see what Pakistan has done and the relationship, how they kind of what path they have taken, Pakistan has used a lot of punitive strict measures to pressurize the Taliban, and in that process the people Afghan have badly suffered the fallout of these policy decisions. There have been, restrictions on releasing of thousands of containers of imports of essential items which were stuck at the Karachi port. I don't know what's happened to it now. I don't have the reports then. If Islamabad has used its economic leverage over Afghanistan, has taken some stringent measure to tighten the trade regime with Kabul, for example, imposition of 10% of fee on some imports and tough conditions on the bank guarantee. Then in September 2023, obviously, Pakistan issued the illegal foreigner repatriation plan, which implied return of Afghan refugees residing in Pakistan, and that was a tough call. So there has been a shift in Pakistan's policy entailing punitive actions. It reflects its angers, frustration there, but no change has been there. TTP has been emboldened exponentially after the fall of the democratic regime and takeover of Taliban in Kabul. And the ideological victory of the Afghan Taliban without compromising their terms and conditions in Afghanistan I think, have added to the conviction of the TTP that victory is feasible in Taliban. These are tough, as changes which we see, to which there are little answers, I feel, although the military operations have been conducted, but we don't see a change in the TTP's posturing. They have imitated the tactics of the Afghan Taliban of naming shadow governments which oversee 5 or 6 regional deputies, and they have shown no inclination for negotiation or settlement. There are also reports that suggest that the group has access to the equipment left behind by the Western forces. There have been repeated warnings, pressures, punitive measures, but nothing has shown any result. Now, on the contrary, other military groups and insurgent movements have tried to leverage the security situation. And what we see that the regional branches of ISIS, the ISKP, and ISPP have been active in their operations in Afghanistan and somewhere in Pakistan that we see. So what the repercussions of these deteriorated relationship definitely will suffocate the fragile Afghan economy. It will increase the burden on the Afghan state. And TTP, on the other hand, I feel will emerge as a winner in the whole situation as of now. The militant group has a good chance of leveraging the evolving situation, which would allow the TTP to enhance its recruitment base. So I think there are more chances of merger of the small militant group with the TTP, and that cannot be ruled out. So I feel there are multiple challenges here, where Pakistan is tried to redefine its terms of engagement with the Taliban, but has that redefinement actually worked in Pakistan's favor? No. There are some changes that we see in the last, say, 1 or 2 weeks, but are these sustainable? Will Pakistan actually go ahead and try to take steps which would help the Afghan situation and change the relationship? I am not sure about that, and it remains to be seen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shalini, for your insightful talk. You have very well covered the aspect related to Taliban 2.0 and Pakistan-Afghanistan relations and the current situation. This has set a good stage for other topics to be discussed in the session. So thank you once again. Next, we have Mr. Ziaullah Hamdard, who is going to speak on the understanding that Pashtun Tahafuz movement or Pashtun protection movement and its impact on Pakistan and Afghanistan region. So over to you, Mr. Ziaullah.
I think he's in the meeting.
No, he's here. Are you there, Chawla?
Hello. Yeah, I'm here. Could you listen to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Just let me get connected.
Yeah, your video. Yeah, now we can see and listen to you.
Okay, that's right. Thank you very much, Levsa, and thank you, Dr. Shalini, for the wonderful presentation. It was really thought-provoking, especially speaking about the strategic depth and Taliban 2.0. These are the discussions that we are constantly having after the fall of Kabul and the emergence or the emergence of these militias and the type of deteriorating situation in the region, especially for Pashtuns. So yeah, in that context, as for my topic is concerned, so may I share the presentation just for,
Yeah.
okay, let me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let me.
Yes.
Okay, by the way, how much time do I have?
You have about
You have
25 minutes.
25 minutes. Okay, that's right. So,
Mr. Zia, in case you have any difficulty, you can share the PPT with me.
And we can present it for you.
hello.
Yes, Mr. Zia.
Okay, so yeah, so my topic, the topic that you have given to me, is the Pashtun Tahafuz movement and its impact. So I'll try to speak briefly because we had already another presentation on the same forum, which is already available on your channel on YouTube. So I've spoken in detail how the Pashtun Tahafuz movement emerged, what were the underlying reasons behind the emergence of this digital social and civil rights movement, and how it is doing. But as for the impact is concerned, so today I will speak about the impact and a few bullet points. So Pashtun Tahafuz movement, it is a civil rights and social movement, social and political movement that emerged in the federally administered tribal regions, or ex-FATA, which are the districts, 7 districts that actually are bordering Afghanistan. So it's across the Duran line. These are the areas where this movement was emerged. And you know that these are actually the areas where this war on terror or this jihad was fought. So since last four decades, like since last 40 years, we have seen jihadis, we have seen the war on terror in this region. And despite of the fact that there have been, a jihad that, one of the ministers, especially the defense minister yesterday, he mentioned that Pakistan has been doing a lot of dirty work for the US and UK. So because they were, fighting this proxy war, so the journalists were earning money, the military and some people or some contractors, they were making money. But what actually we ended up like in the destruction or dismantling of the state of Afghanistan. So it has far-reaching consequences for Pashtuns. And then, it also had an impact inside Pakistan because most of the Pashtuns, they were militarized by those petrodollars in those 20 years. And, eventually we saw the fall of the Soviet Union and the emergence of the New World Order of the United States as a unipolar world and as a superpower, as a sole superpower that is dictating the terms of the world now. Uh, and the second word, and the second phase we saw in the last 2 decades when 9/11 happened. So the same militants or the same militias like Al Qaeda, Taliban, Chechik, Uzbek, Tajik, and the Punjabis and the Pashtun militants. like Gulbuddin Hikmatyar and Rabbanis and all these people. They started fighting among each other, and eventually 9/11 happened because those international militants, they started using the Afghan soil after the fall of the Kabul, after the jihad. They started fighting among each other, and then they started those internationally designated terrorists that were later on you know uh, defined as terrorists or declared as terrorists. They were the uh, loved ones, or the beloved of the United States at that time, were called the Mujs. So those Mujs actually did 9/11 and took responsibility for the Arabs. They took responsibility for 9/11, and America came on big. And we saw again a destruction, a two-decade war or conflict in the region, which costed the United States almost more than $2.3 trillion, and there were a lot of killings, a lot of people died, they lost their lives. So that's the type of situation in which this social movement actually emerged. So when this war on terror was fought, the whole media was focusing on Pashtuns, and they are terrorists, extremists, and Pashtuns are the type of profiling that the Pashtuns were facing at that time, because the Western media, the Pakistani media, even the Indian media, every media was following the lines of the of the dominant class, which was the United States, that was dictating the terms, labeling specific nations as a whole and specific countries as a whole as terrorist. So for 2 decades, and because I've also explained in the previous presentation that we have a history of profiling of Pashtuns since Anglo-Afghan wars, because Afghans were, when Gandhi and Bacha Khan were having that non-violent struggle together. Before that, we had there almost two Anglo-Afghan wars, and after that we have the third Anglo-Afghan war. So in those Anglo-Afghan wars, the West, especially the imperial power, which was the Britain in that case, they actually started writing against Pashtuns, and because of our struggle for freedom, and because of the militant struggle that Pashtuns had against the British imperialism in those Fatah areas, just wanted to get them out. So we were, there was a lot of profiling and a lot of stereotyping of Pashtuns. So it's a continuation of it. So because there were a lot of profiling, because when profiling or stereotyping is happened, it actually justifies the killings that has real life consequences for those people are mentioned, or those ethnic groups against whom this profiling or stereotyping is done. So Pashtuns were actually suffering from that since more than 200 years. But in the last 4 decades, or in the last 40 years, we saw a multifold increase in that profiling and that stereotyping, and those atrocities that Pashtuns had actually gone through, because the proxy wars that was imposed on their lands by the world powers in Afghanistan, and eventually made also taken up by Pakistan as a contractor, it had real life consequences for the people in the region across the Durand line, especially Pashtuns across the Durand line, because all the stakeholders, they had agreed upon that this will be the conflict zone, like it will be Afghanistan and the bordering areas of Pakistan with Afghanistan. So all the stakeholders, they had actually fought, they have been fighting since last 4 decades only in this conflict zone. And it, if you go back to the hijacking of the Indian planes, or if you're going to the 9/11, if you are going to the jihadi groups, if you are going to the trainings camps in Mansehra. So this was the NWFP, or Khyber Pakhtunkwa. This was the area which was actually decided or agreed upon that those players will be playing. And this was the area where Pashtuns were living, Afghans were living across the Durand line. So, eventually what happened that we saw that Pashtuns have been, they suffered a lot. And because there was no one to speak for them, and because of, a lot of force in the region, a lot of forces in the region fighting among each other, uh, the Pashtuns were unable even to speak for themselves. Nobody listened to them. they didn't have any platform. They didn't have any political party. Although there were so many political parties in Afghanistan before the state of Afghanistan was dismantled. But after dismantling the state of Afghanistan, we saw the warlords or the militant groups only. So the same was applied in Pakhtunkhwa. We had the 100-year-old movement of Bacha, and which was later on converted into a National Awami Party, and now it is some of its ideologues are present in the form of ANP. But they couldn't even understand the situation or the challenge that they were facing, especially in the bordering area. So that was actually the bigger problem, where the people, the Pashtuns living in the Duran line, across the Duran line, they felt that they have left, thrown to the walls, and they have been, isolated by the mainstream Pashtuns as well. So there, in 2018, after 2 decades, when those IDPs, because of the IDPs or internally displaced person, when they went back and they saw their homes being destroyed and everything in the right, their markets, their roads, their houses, everything were already demolished. So then they started, there was a movement, and after the murder of a young boy, a tribal in Karachi by a police officer, so it actually played the role of for the emergence of a new movement. And we saw that the Pashtun Tahafuz movement, the tribal students, actually they came up to Afghanistan for a long march. They protested in the capital, in the center. Even then, they were sitting in the capital in front of the press club and in front of near the parliament, but they were totally blacked out in the mainstream media still. But it was digital media or social media which actually helped in reaching out to the larger audience and to the Pashtun community, to the diasporic Pashtuns, and they actually they were succeeded to form a movement of their own, which later on became the Pashtun Tahafuz movement. So since last 7 years, the Pashtun Tahafuz movement have been, they have been a type of fight, having a hide and seek war type situation with, or a game with the military of Pakistan. Despite a lot of sufferings, despite a lot of imprisonment, despite a lot of life losses, and despite a lot of sacrifices, the Pashtun Tahafuz movement are still struggling to make that impact for which this movement has built. But unfortunately, despite of the fact that still the forces are so huge, and the effort, despite of the sacrifice, are huge, but the other are the external forces, they're also bigger. So that's why they are unable to stop this proxy war on their land. They have been unable to to bring peace onto their lands. They are unable to stop the killing of their people. But despite all these fakes, the Pashtun Tahafuz movement have been successful on multiple fronts. So I'm going to tell about a few of them, which are the major areas in which Pashtun Tahafuz movement has actually changed, and not only changed things for the better, but also became a hope for the oppressed, marginalized communities or Pashtuns across the Duran line, and the diasporic Pashtun and overall Pashtun nation. So the first thing was the spiral of silence. So the first point is, I'm speaking about the spiral of silence. There is a theory in social sciences. We can teach it in the mainstream media about spiral of silence. So, when there are situations when nobody speaks, so there are some people who actually come up to break the spiral of silence. Like, in India, between India and Pakistan, there is a type of a hostile situation. So at this time, like anybody who would speak about this peace would automatically be silenced because of the anger or the type of frustrations that the Indian people have over the recent terrorist attacks. So these are the types of situations. Sometimes the spiral of silence happens because of the domination of the force. The dominant people, they actually isolate all the people who are speaking, and there is total silence. So it was the Pashtun Tahafuz movement that broke the spiral of the silence that actually was prevailing over in those regions. Anybody who tried to speak up before were actually hunted down, they were killed, or they were actually butchered by the those fighting forces from the Pakistani state to the militants, and nobody could ever dare to speak against him. So anybody, any elder, any tribal elder who spoke, they actually they were killed, they were isolated. According to the statistics, we have more than 2,000 tribal elders have been butchered by the those fighting forces in the region. So now imagine 200 more than 2,000 tribal elders being butchered. So that's a big number for a people, for a community who is trying to resist their oppression and occupation, marginalization, and proxy wars. Similarly, like when they started speaking up, so everybody spoke in their support. So the first achievement of the PTM was breaking the spiral of silence in which the state of Pakistan had this monopoly or hegemony over the means of information. But when Pashtun Tahafuz emerged, they actually changed the very narrative. Before we had, like, for example, the narrative that Pashtuns are terrorists, Pashtuns are extremists, their beards are there, like we have Punjabis, they have those beards and those turbans and their get-up, the same way the get-up of Pashtuns were actually stereotyped in the mainstream media, and their language, their acts, and whatever the media portrayed. Even we saw even the Indian movies, not only Pakistani movies and dramas, even we saw it being replicated in the Indian movies, like Pashtuns, giving them a very negative connotation and showing them as some people like like Vikings, or some people who are actually gladiators or warlords, or they're all of them. So this was the first achievement that we needed at a time. So Pashtun Tahafuz movement, they broke the spiral of silence. The second thing was Pashtun Tahafuz movement started to put certain demands. So the first demand was present all the missing persons in the court of law, because there were so many. The military was involved in in operations. There have been more than 10 military operations in the region. So the military was abducting people. Anybody who the military doubted that might be involved in any type of militancy, and because we still have those colonial legacies enacted inside Pakistan, so we have the collective punishments. Uh, the FATA, or federally administered tribal areas, was run through a colonial era law still in 2020, till 2020, even today, but in a different form, or different version of the law. So even at that time, like in 2 decades war, we saw that this FCR, or frontier crimes regulations through colonial laws, everybody, it was called collective punishment. So anybody who committed an act of violence against the British colonizers, their whole family was to, or had to, bear the brunt of that act. So the same laws were enacted, and they were being implemented where Pashtuns were suffering. So this first started like the military had disappeared. A lot of people, Pashtuns, thousands of them, but we didn't have any data. So the Pashtun Tahafuz movement in the last 7 years, they actually collected those data, shared it with the authorities, and asked them to present all those missing Pashtuns in the court of law. If they have committed any crime, punish them as per law. If they haven't, just leave them, because you cannot. We have internment centers inside Pakistan, where all those people have been abducted and put there illegally. So this was the first thing. Talking about enforced disappearance. It's not only Pashtuns, it's also there in Balochistan. A lot of people, they are in thousands, they're missing in thousands. Like the last time I checked with the person who was actually collecting the data, he said that he has personally verified the data of the 6,000 Pashtuns who have been abducted by the military in this conflict, or in this situation. The second thing was, so, and we also noted the Baloch have also been abducted because there is another type of a conflict going on in Balochistan. So enforced disappearances, this was the first because it is one of the most, why thing that could happen to any community, any person, that he's being abducted by the state or non-state actors, but usually by the state, where the state claims to be, uh, a social contract or a constitutional or legal entity. But there, if the state is abducting people, so what about the militants? So that was the first thing, or the huge thing that they highlighted. They actually started running campaigns, and not only they highlighted it, but what the advantage was, they made it very difficult for the military to abduct, any other people. Although whenever they abduct any people, any person, so they actually raise the issue in the mainstream media, and they talk about, they just share it with the mainstream media, they share it on social media, and making it very difficult, for the military or for the state to kill them extrajudicially. Because before that, anybody who was abducted, there were many chances that his dead body or mutilated body would be thrown somewhere, in the region, in the area. So this was the biggest achievement. The second achievement was stop profiling of Pashtuns. Like I said in my introduction, that Pashtuns they are the most highly, stereotyped people in the region, because of the different, certain reasons, fighting against, standing up against colonialism, being, freedom loving, being, the people who have actually ruled the region and led an empire in the past. But despite of the fact, today they are, because all the forces they gather against, all the gods are not on their side in these days. So we see the Pashtun being one of the worst type of, uh, the worst type. They are facing the worst type of stereotyping and humiliation, and the worst type of, name calling in the mainstream media. So the second thing was, stop profiling our Pashtuns. They not only issued this, raised this concern with the state of Pakistan, with the mainstream media, but whenever they saw anything negative in the mainstream media, in the news, in the movies, or in the dramas, or on the military sponsored content like ISPR sponsored television, there are, the national anthems that they used to boost the morale of the military. So they used to, stereotype Pashtuns in those songs. So the Pashtun Tahafuz movement and their activists, most of them were educated university graduates. They started highlighting it, and they started, protesting it. And now, there is a lot of awareness building, and there is still a lot of awareness in the region that against profiling of Pashtun. The third thing was stop, this landmines. So because there were more than 10 military operations and the militants were fighting with each other, so there were a lot of landmines in the region. Because every time they ran a military operation inside a district, or an agency like Waziristan or Khyber agency or anywhere, so they would send the people out of the, of their region, their homes, and into the IDP camps, internally displaced camps. And after a few years, they were being told that you can come back. The military has actually cleared the area of militants. But whenever the people came, their kids, when they were playing in the fields, they were blown up by those landmines. So they were not cleared up. So it was another claim, because every day, every other day, I was checking. 2 days ago, there was a young boy, he was playing, and he was, he became a victim of these landmines. So this was another demand. Another demand was, relocation, or taking all those people who have the state has made IDPs back to their homes. So this was another demand, that we are not going to become IDPs anymore, because the Pashtuns have been treated as some type of creatures or robots, where they push the button, leave your homes, and the Pashtuns leave their home. And then they send them, okay, you can go home, and without any clearance, without any security, when they go back, there's again the military, they are trapped by the militants and the military. So they are trapped between the proxies, or the proxy wars. So that was another achievement of the PTM was, the PTM actually what it did was incarnated, or it helped in the reincarnation or rebirth or renaissance of Pashtun nationalism. So Pashtun nationalism was almost uh, fading in the type of the state narratives and the type of ideological apparatus that we have in the mainstream media by the syllabus, from the syllabus to the mainstream media to the more than 450 newspapers, magazines, more than 80 televisions that we have in Pakistan, more than 200 radio stations or FM channels, both FM and AM channels. So there was so much bombardment of information of their narrative of the state of Pakistan in the name of religion, like two nation theory. So the two nation theory was so dominant, but when Pashtun Tahafuz emerged, it actually not only challenged but also helped in changing those narratives. That we are Pashtuns, we are a separate nation. Pakistan is a multiplicity of nation where Baloch, Pashtun, Punjabis, Sindhis, and all other nations or ethnic groups live together under a social contract. And you cannot simply brush or paint us like one nation in the name of religion, like the Muslim League did, that there are only two nations in India, even by the very definition, like it doesn't make any sense, like there are Hindus and Muslims in India. So if we define nation by the, by the religion, so still there are so many religions in South Asia. It's one of the most, diverse, religiously diverse region in the area. Still, so this was the type of narratives or the type of things that actually Pashtun Tahafuz movement challenged, and not only challenged but was very much successful in challenging those ideas, especially the narratives of the state, especially the policies of the state, and the ideology of the state. So the state had a monopoly over this information, these narratives. The state had a monopoly over everything, over the ideological apparatus. The Pashtun Tahafuz movement, when it organized in huge protest, when they ran campaigns on digital media technology, they actually made their own narrative and was very much successful. If you observe as a researcher, that the very narrative of the Pashtuns in the region, especially in Pakhtunkhwa, you will find out like the before nobody could speak against the military, nobody could speak against the militants, nobody could speak against them, and everybody tried to sell the same narratives that were sold by, like the narrative of religion, the narrative of Pakistan, the ideology of Pakistan. But when this movement emerged, we heard for the first time that Pashtuns, they came up with an alternative narrative of their history, of their language, of their identity, just like Bengalis did, just like Baloch are doing, just like Sindhis are actually having their, their protesting. So in Pakistan, since last 7 years, we see that there is a lot of, rise in ethno-nationalism in the region. So the Pashtuns are on the roads. We see the Baloch on the roads. The Baloch women are leading them. We see the Sindhis are on the roads. So this is the type of situation that since last 7 or 8 decades, there are so many social movements in the region in Pakistan, like the Baloch Yakjehti Committee. They emerged as a, they uniting or a strong force, uniting their own people and making up their own narratives and challenging the state of Pakistan's narratives. The Pashtuns did the same. The Kashmiri, we saw even in the Pakistani occupied Kashmir, we saw that the Kashmiris, they came up when the Kashmir front was closed in 2005. So the Kashmiri had a chance to reorganize themselves and challenge their occupiers on both sides. So the Kashmiri nationalists are emerging, and they are actually telling that we are actually having our own narrative. So that's what we saw. We saw the women rights movements in Pakistan. So women march or Aurat march or women rights movements, they are actually emerging in the last few years. We saw their successful campaigns and successful marches, and they are actually challenging the narrative. So we are living in interesting times. I think Pashtun Tahafuz movement, there are so many others, but those are one. We can have a lot of deep details. I will leave that to the question and answer session. But thank you very much. I hope I made a few points. I'll give you an idea what the Pashtun Tahafuz movement has achieved so far and what impact it has on the regional politics, especially inside Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ziaullah Hamdard, for bringing the importance of the Pashtun Tahafuz movement or Pashtun protection movement and what it's doing through the civil rights movement. And the world needs to know about the genocide committed by the Pakistani state against the Pashtun. Thank you once again. Lastly, our final speaker for the session is Dr. Asif Kamal, who is going to speak on the exploitation of natural resources in Khyber Pakhtunkwa. A very important topic. Over to you, Dr. Asif. Do we have Dr. Asif here?
Yes, I hear you. Okay, so thank you, Ziola. You talk a very critical topic. I tried my best. First of all, I would say that I can appreciate your efforts to organize this kind of events, a session, and especially that give us a chance that we can talk and the people can hear our voices. So today I will speaking about the very critical subject of natural resources of Pashtunkhwa. Because I'm from Pashtunkhwa, so I will talk about this. I try to gather some accurate data about this, but if there is some mistake, so please forgive me for that. So as we know that we have a lot of natural resources, and we are not poor people, but we are systematically the state of Pakistan is doing exploitation very systematically, and they didn't give us the benefits from our resources. For example, if I go to the oil and gas, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is producing around 45% of the oil of all Pakistan. That is like almost 50% of the oil of Pakistan. And 30% gas is natural gas is also produced by Pakhtunkhwa. And 42% of LPG on daily basis, we give this amount of resources to the state. But you know, constitutionally, actually, the constitution clearly said that we have also some kind of rights. But as I told you in the beginning, that systematically they are exploitation our resources. Otherwise, you can see that from Article 158 to 172, I think, it's totally about the natural resources of Pakistan. So exactly 158 article says that the province where the wellhead of oil or gas is situated, they shall have a precedence to meet their own requirements. So for example, now I give you a little bit data about, like, we produce 500 MMBTU of MMCF of gas production, but our consumption is only 250 MMCF, and we still didn't receive this 250 MMCF, and we have gas load shedding. We are not even this is like we are surplus. We are producing 500 MMCF, but we only have the share. We only have consumption of 250 MMCF, but still we are not able to get this amount of gas for our own use. The same if we talk about other minerals like for example, emerald, nephrite, and other minerals. So Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is also very famous and also rich from other mineral resources, and we have a lot of deposits of mineral resources, particularly gemstones and also nephrite and other kind of very important and very valuable minerals. Especially Swat Valley is very famous for its emerald, and Momand area that is producing nephrite, which is also known for its bright green color all over the world. And all other mineral that is found in the province includes topaz, that is from Mardan, and peridot, that is from Kohistan. Uh, if we can go to the amount, I will not go in a very detail because it will take too much time. But I just want to put a little bit data in front of you. So like Swat holds around 70 million carat of the world finest emerald, which valued between 4,000 to 6,000 per carat. So like you see how naturally we are wealthy, but how systematically we are poor, how they looted our resources. As well, for example, annually, I think annually we extract 1,900 1,900 tons of nephrite from Momand agency. The same Momand also produce marble, and that is like 1.36 million annually we produce marble. And also Malakand, Sawabi, Bonaire, Mardan. If we go, there is like billions of tons of marble we have. And also in Bajawar, if you can see Bajawar, this is some data that I got from like official resources. So Bajawar, 85,000 tons of marble and 1,550 tons of chromite are mined every year. And Upper Waziristan, that is gold and copper mines there. Like, for example, I am very close to Waziristan and I know how they can loot our resources. For example, I give you one example, like a case study of myself, like, because I am in the border of Waziristan and Banu. Like I'm very close to Waziristan more than Banu. So we see like in the midnight, there is like not only one or two or three, like hundreds of trucks are every night going from Waziristan to Punjab, and no one is able to ask them. If you ask them, because this is what I'm saying, as we tried once to ask them, like, what are you doing and what is this? And they said, this is like something from the military, because the drivers are local. So this is like, this is something from the military, and they give us like to send it to other provinces. So how systematically they take orders, and why they do this? For example, we talk about the war on terror in the area. So I think war on terror is also just because of to looting our resources. This is the main point of the Punjabi's establishment and the military, to take our resources. Another example I will give you, I went to Shawal Valley, the Waziristan. I think it was in 2007-8. And if you see the valley, it was like green and lush of the trees and blah, blah, blah. But recently, when I went there in 2021, like the trees, all the forest were disappear. And if we go to ask the local people, they said, "Hi, we don't know." So like in the periods of the Zarbe Azab, the military operation, they take all the resources, just like on the name of that, like we have security issues, but actually they take all the precious woods, the trees from Waziristan. As well, if we come to the energy sector, so as you know, Pushtunkhwa is producing I think 3,000 megawatt electricity Pushtunkhwa is producing, and you know the overall electricity consumption of Pushtunkhwa is I think is like less than 1,500, and we produce 3,000, but we have load shedding on daily basis, not only 1 hour or 2 hours. We have like 20 and 15 hours load shedding in Pushtunkhwa, in like not in a main cities, but like backward areas. We don't have even electricity for our lives to survive. So 50% of electricity we are producing to the state, and I think if we stop share this electricity with Pakistan, I think it will be default. So another thing is what I said, like forest. So for example, pine nuts and pine nuts, for example, we get from Chitral, South Waziristan, and also from North Waziristan. There also have. So we take annually 64,000 kg of pine nuts only produce annually, and we sold these pine nuts 18,000 rupees per kg to China. So like you can see how much economy we are generating, but what we are getting from it, we don't have any share. The state didn't give us anything. How to say, we give them more, but we didn't get anything. So it's like a very, but all these things are going very systematically. Like recently, Ziaullah should know about that, the mineral and mines bill. This is like a very legal, how to say, they want to take everything in a legal way. That's why they want to introduce that bill, the minerals and mines bill, which is a very hot issue in Pakistan now. Same if we go to the coal mines, that Hangu and Aurangzai, Cherat, Gudahel, and also Daradamhel, we are estimated like 123 million tons of coal we are producing. This is like what we have and what we give to the state. But if you go to that places where these natural resources are producing, they have nothing. Their life is very miserable. Their infrastructure is very miserable. Their schools, their hospital is like you are in maybe 18th centuries. If you go there, they looks like 18th centuries, because I am from very backward areas where I know how we survive and how we live and how our infrastructure is. Now, so another thing is the reality of how systematic exploitation they are doing is the important thing is that the resources contracts, like there are contractors, they can do deal with the government to do contracts and take these resources. So they are mostly outsider. They are not from Pashtunkhwa. They are not Pashtun. They are mostly Punjabis businessmen. And if there is no Punjabi businessman, then the companies which are linked is with the military. That is like, for example, in motorways or in toll plazas, there is NLC, FWO, and in petroleum like Mari. Mari company is also the military company. The newly developed gas pipeline that is going through Banu from Waziristan is also under the under Mari company, and Mari company is a military company. So what I mean is that, for example, if we see by law, KP should benefit first from the resources in its territory, and which I said that Article 158 to 172, it openly said that like the natural resources where they are situated, the province shall had precedence that they can get it first. The same as Article 161 Clause 1 says that oil and gas excise from a wellhead to that province should give a precedence. But in practice, almost all extraction is pooled into the national network. Like they made a national grid. For example, the gas from Lucky Marwat, from Waziristan, from Karak, from Kuhat, it's going to the national grid, and then they give us the gas. Like, for example, we produce a gas for example, $4 MMBTU. MMBTU, $4 only. But they bring a gas from outside is like around about $30 MMBTU. And then they will get it together in the national grid, and then they will divide it. Like, for example, the price is now, if I produce one 1 MMBTU on $4, but the same gas I will buy on $10 to $15. So it's like really exploitation of our resources. So the same, if we go to the net hydel profit, in if we go to in electricity, yeah, in electricity, we provide 20 billion units. 20 billion units we are providing from hydel power. That is a very cheapest electricity in all over the world with hydel power. And our consumption is only 10 billion units. We produce 20 billion units, but our consumption is 10 billion units. And the price of 1 unit is maximum 1 to 2 rupees, but they sell the same electricity from 15 to 20 rupees. So it's like really exploitation. So the actually, as I said, the constitution of Pakistan explicitly protect provincial resources rights, but we still didn't get enough rights from the state. We have, for example, I can give you example of our Banu, that the wellhead recently is how to say, is producing a lot of natural gas. But one thing they are not doing is, like, we want that you can give us how to say, like, because this gas is belong to us, we have the first priority to give us, but they are not giving this, and they will first bring it to Punjab, and then again they will send it from Punjab to here. Another thing is, like, the oil refineries. Like, Pakistan have 5 big oil refineries, and we are the big producers of oils in Pakistan, as we are producing 43% 43% of oils to the Pakistan. But we don't have any oil refinery. Like, we are the major producers, but we don't have any oil refineries. Like, how is possible? And you take the crude oil from here to Karachi, to Punjab, to Attak, but why not you can build a factory or here in the province where they're producing the oil. The same, if you can see, around about 50 marketing companies, 50 marketing companies, they are all based in Punjab. No marketing company is in Pakhtunkhwa. So this is a very another thing is, like, as you know, that the official figure of Pakhtunkhwa is showing that we owed about 84 billion cumulative hydro profit from the central government, that is 23 and 24. The year of 23 and 24. But how much they give us? Only 7 billion. Like, 70 billion outstanding we still have, but they are not giving us. And this kind of, like, the 7 billion, we just like requesting them, like, we are begging to give us our share. And you know that, like, KP has protested many times for this, but it's not work, because you know that, like, might is right. So and this kind of things have also very direct influence on our budget. Like, if we didn't get shares from the center, how we can manage our budget? So this is also one thing is a very critical for our infrastructure, for our development, and for our finance department. Another thing I would like to tell about the requires of the fuel for hydropower. Like as I told you that we are producing electricity from hydropower, from water. But in Punjab, they are exporting, importing oil, French oil or others diesels to produce electricity. So it's very expensive, but we are producing in 1 to 2 rupees per unit. But the same, if we produce it with oil, then we can get that around about for 50 to 20, 50 to 20 rupees. So what I mean is that, like, we are not poor, but we are being looted. Our infrastructure is destroyed. Why our infrastructure is destroyed? Because they bring the game of war and terror to our area, just to destabilize our area, to loot it our resources. Like, for example, sorry, I didn't get your point. Okay, so how systematically they take our resources. But what we need to do now is we need to aware our people. We need to run campaigns on social media, and we can also arrange this kind of seminars and sessions online and offline. Also go to schools, colleges, to universities, to aware our people about, like, this is our rights, this is our assets. This is not we are begging, this is not we are asking them to help us. This is our right, fundamental rights, legal rights. And also we need full provincial control on our natural resources, as what the 18th amendment of the Constitution of Pakistan said. And also we need a local ownership of mines, power plants, and also hoteling, because hoteling is also now the in hand of military. They take a lot of, like, the tourism is also now in hand of the military. And so we need, like, end to the military monopoly over economic activities. I think that's, like, the only thing that we can take our resources back from them, if we can end the military monopoly in all economic activities in Pashtunkhwa and in Pakistan, and especially in Pakhtunkhwa. And also we need to go to the international and national, everywhere we can talk about these things, and we can ask the international institution, and like ICJ or something, that these are our rights, so please help us to get our rights. And also we can work for the freedom of speech of Pashtun voices, to raise these realities without any fear. Like, for example, I am still in fear. So we need to raise voice for the Pashtun people, because like, if someone is talking about this, they will be labeled like a state against state and anti-state, and like a traitor, and you're from Ra, and you're from Mossad, and you're from Israel, and you're like, this kind of labels they give us. So we need to rise this kind of realities in front of the international community. So thank you, everyone, and if I have any mistakes, please correct me. Thank you so much.
I think, Priyanshu, you can help Levsa with. Okay,
Yes,
Levsa.
I'm here. Yeah, sorry, I just had to move and then come back again. I'm in the library. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Asif, for bringing the economic exploitation of Khyber Pakhtunkwa. It's a very important topic, which is neglected from the mainstream discourse. Thank you once again. So with this, we have come to an end of the session, and Priyanshu will help me with the answer and question and answer session. So thank you.
Yes. Hi. So we'll be moving into the Q&A for this session now. Anybody and everybody who has a question, you're free to post them in the chat box. I'll be relegating them to the panel one by one. So this is a question to a question open to all of the panel. It says, would it be correct to say militant landscape in the Pashtun belt has shifted from purely ideological jihadism to being increasingly intertwined with political and ethnic issues? So anybody from the panel who feels that they have a knowledge about this is welcome to answer. Yes, sir. Sure.
Hello. Could you
Hi,
hear
sir.
me? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, a very important question. This is what the debate that we had. We had an argument discussion. I raised this point with Sir Devasher in the previous discussion. So most of the people, they think like, the militant landscape is intertwined with the ethnicity or politics. I don't think so, because this is what I have been, raising constantly. This is the type of a trap that most of our intellectuals fall into. Pashtuns, militancy, wherever it has gone, it's never, nationalist. It's never when it's in the name of religion. It could be either in the religion ideological, or it could be a proxy. We have different types of militancy or militant groups in the region. So in Kashmir, the militancy in Kashmir is totally different to that of militancy in Ukraine, or the militancy or militant groups in Palestine. So depending on the different groups or ideologies, we have to understand what the ideology, where the ideology is coming from, and who is actually having control over the narratives or ideology, or even the governance structure of those militant groups. So we had like Al Qaeda, we had all these religious groups who fought in Afghanistan, the Mujahideen groups. They were all religious, but who was giving them petrodollars? Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and United States and the allies. They were all supporting them. Why? So you see, the ideology was religion, it was Islam, Muslims, it was jihad, but who was funding them? It was a proxy war of the world powers. So the same way, we have Pashtun militants. So most of the Taliban, they are almost, 90, more than 90%, they are Pashtuns by ethnicity. But we still consider them as a proxy of the Pakistani or Punjabi military. And that's something we constantly challenge the people, because they are not, grounded in any idea, despite the fact that they're claiming that they are freedom fighters. What are they fighting for? The only thing, like, they are, it's not Pashtun nationalism. So all the militant groups or the militancy that we have, they are proxies from IS to ISKP to Taliban or other groups. There are proxies of one country or another, or one group or another, but they are not Pashtun. There could be anything but not Pashtun nationalists. Because if you go into the discourse or ideology of those groups, you go to their press releases, if you go to their statements, if they go to their demands, that whatever, there's everything in it, they could think of, but the only thing that is missing is Pashtun nationalism. They don't speak about Pashtun identity. They don't speak about Pashtun language. They don't speak about the Pashtun autonomy or sovereignty. They don't talk about it, and they even don't have the scope or understanding, of this running a modern state. So we have Taliban now. They are banning this girls' education. Is it something inherent to Pashtun culture? We have more than thousands of schools in Pakhtunkhwa. We have thousands of schools in Afghanistan. So is it something Pashtun culture? Banning of girls' school, and it happened only during the Taliban war regime, and 7 years ago. Sorry, 1990s, and it happened a few years ago. So it's for the second time when Taliban emerged because they are not representatives of Pashtuns, but because they were a force or a militant group that was made up of Pashtuns by the contractors. So we think we associate them with Pashtuns. It's the same way the Buddha Bamyan. It survived in Afghanistan, while Pashtuns are blamed like Abdali and Ghaznavi when they came after Somanath. So all those things happened in history, but the Buddha Bamyan was there for thousands of years. So if he was already like the Pashtuns, so, if they were against the Buddhas or the Hinduism or Hindu culture. What was Buddha Bamyan doing for more than 300 years, while Pashtuns had their own sovereign state? So it's only, see, these are the terrorist things. All we need to understand is to go deep and understand, to find out, we to understand and isolate him from the nationalism. Because if we mix up, it's like Muslim League, they played nationalism in the name of two-nation theory. And when they played nationalism, eventually what we got Indian nation, Hindu nation, and Muslim nation. Is that true? So it's not true. India is still not a Hindu nation. India is a mix of multiplicity of nations. It has Hindus, it has religions, faiths, and it has multiplicity of nations as well. The same way, Pakistan, it has multiplicity of religions. We have Hindus, we have Sikhs, we have other people, and we have Muslims. So it's not about like the way we oversimplify, and sometimes we get confused and try to associate, because that's what the proxies, the masters of the proxies are trying to sell to the world, and try to isolate us with our Pashtun leaders, or the Pashtun nationalist movements from the discourse. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That actually puts a lot into perspective. We also have the next question addressed to you. So the question says, two famous slogans from the Pashtun Tahafuz movement are "Da Sangha Azadi Da," which means "What kind of freedom is this" in English, and "Ye Jo Desh Krati Hai," ise piche Vardi hai, which means this terrorism is the military or the uniform. These slogans have been raised by protesters specifically during the May 9th incident in Pakistan. So these were raised by the civilians, and they talked about years of military and army rule, and the destruction and the deterioration it has brought to not just the people in the region, but also the Pashtun culture as whole. So do you think these slogans and this protest is the first sign of acceptance towards the movement in Pakistan, specifically in the Punjab region?
Well, that's also a good question. I think, the Pashtun Tahafuz movement, when it emerged, it came up with the slogans, "Jwanan mo qatal ki da sanga zadila." Our youth are being slaughtered or being murdered. What type of freedom is this? So these were the type of slogans they raised. Like, our people are being killed. So, because Pashtun Tahafuz movement, it emerged after the murder of a youngster whose name was Nakeem Masood. He was, an aspirant of modeling. And he was a very, handsome man. But when he was killed, so, these were the types of, and then it was a type of an anthem. Somebody wrote, a poet wrote about it, and then it became one of the popular songs of the, protests. As for the second part is concerned, like, when when Pashtuns rose those slogans, these slogans were not something created by the Pashtuns themselves. If you go through, I've come up when I was looking into the history or doing research on the movement, because I recently defended my thesis on Pashtun Tahafuz movement. So when I was looking into the various aspects, especially what you have, in Pakistan, we have so many movements in the last 2 decades. So we had another movement. It was called the Liars Movement in 2007. So the same slogans was raised at that time as well. But now, these slogans have been so much popular that every nation, every ethnic group, every civil rights movement, every group is actually raising them. If you see, you will come across a lot of videos of the lawyers. They will be, whenever they are protesting, they're chanting the slogans of, "Ye jo dehshat gardi hai, iske piche vardi hai, uniform is behind terrorism." Whenever you go to Balochistan, the Baloch women are raising these slogans, chanting them, these slogans. If you go to Sindh, the Sindhis are raising or chanting these slogans. So it means there is a type of a consensus among the Pakistani nations that all these games, or the militancy or the militants, or these sectarian conflicts that we have inside the region or outside, they are actually done by the state. And it's not only something new for the people. It was something that it came into the discourse of the public. But before, everybody knew about it. And even the generals, the military generals, They openly say that we have been doing this. Yesterday, we had the Pakistan Defense Minister telling the Sky News, Yalda Hakim, one of the presenter, telling her that we are actually, we have done a lot of dirty work for the rest of the world. So it's simply saying that we have been the contractors. So this is exactly what it means. We have, a lot of confessions from General Musharraf that, Osama bin Laden was our hero, and this Haqqani was our hero, and these guys were our heroes. And they knew why they were their heroes. Osama bin Laden, Benazir Bhutto's statement against Nawaz Sharif, that he actually took a lot of money from him or actually got support. So these are the things that we have in the region, but in the broader context, if you go through, so I agree to the point that these are now going into the public discourse, and these could be, a step away from, and there is a larger consensus and a larger call for, civil supremacy inside Pakistan. And there is a lot of, nationalism arising. So a lot of interesting things are happening in front of our eyes. I think there is a lot of hope for all the nations, oppressed, marginalized communities, that something would definitely come out of it. So we don't know, we can't predict the future, but what we do know is whatever happening on the basis of those evidence, we can predict that it's very difficult for the state of Pakistan to pursue the old age, projects of terrorism and just to make dollars out of it. It's simply not viable in the long run, because the world has, isolated Pakistan. The world has, India and Pakistan. And at that time, it was a different history, but today we live in a totally different world. So I don't think it's viable anymore. And I think that's why it's been in the larger, context, that even the people who they arrest, like PTI, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, it was politically engineered when Imran Khan was brought to power by the military. So even there was those slogans in 9th May. And even one of my friends told me that he had a video of Taliban chanting the slogans, "Ye jo dahshatgardi hai, iske piche vardi hai." So now you imagine that this has become so much obvious that nobody is actually accepting these jihads and these proxy conflicts, because they know what it's all about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That is actually eye-opening up in a lot of different contexts. Uh, for us, the next question that we have is towards Dr. Shalini Chawla. The question is, there have been reports of the TTP perhaps merging with the Al-Qaeda, and security experts have also warned that the TTP may think of joining hands with the ISKP, even if it is not supported by the Afghan Taliban. So, what do you think is the future of terrorism in the region and possibly the impact on India?
So Priyanshu, there are two questions addressed to me. So if you're good with it, can I answer the second one also along right now?
Yeah, sure. Definitely.
It's a sequence, so it will be easier.
Yes.
The second question is about how effective the Taliban 2.0 has been in ensuring stability within Afghanistan, particularly in the face of threats from groups like ISKP. So I'm going to take this one first. So when you say stability, yes, there is absence of war. That's there. With Taliban coming into power, there is absence of war. There are the terror incidents obviously have gone down. It's ISKP, which is the only actor challenging Taliban at the moment. The economy is showing some recovery. But is this absence of military equipment, war led by military equipment, is that peace? That's not, I don't define it as like a peace, because what you see is right now that the war is on against the freedom. So the women rights for education, work, and other basic human rights, those challenges remain. So I don't see that the stability in terms of absence of violence is there, but is that stability? Because in the longish run, these suppression of these rights will have long-term repercussions on the state, on the region. And in fact, I was just thinking this morning that, another 10 years of the same policy of girls not going to school would actually have a full generation of Afghan women, girls who have never been to school. So that is not stable. So yes, there has been acceptance of the new normal. Stability in terms of lack of violence is there that you see, but I don't see this whole phenomena catering to stabilizing in the long term, and this is bound to have repercussions. The second part, which is actually posed as a first question about TTP merging with Al Qaeda, and also, yes, very rightly, the question has been raised that, why the Taliban has continued to support TTP. One is definitely that they are an ideological ally. So they share the same ideology. TTP has been very, very, has had extended support to Taliban in its fight against the Western forces, against the Afghan security forces. So Taliban coming into power, they did have TTP's strong support, and definitely the Pashtunwali culture, would not overlook that support in the future relationship. And another factor which has been repeatedly reiterated, that why the Taliban is not ready to curb its ties with TTP, because there are these apprehensions that if they do so, TTP will join hands with ISKP, which challenges Taliban continuously. So yes, those reports are there. The UN Security Council report for the last 2 years has been continuously highlighting this aspect and highlighting how grave a challenge TTP could potentially become. It could have the regional dynamics. I'm hearing it is already having the regional dimensions, and ISKP anyway has a foothold. Now, the tragedy, when you ask what is the future of terrorism, future is extremely challenging and alarming. And what is the most critical part here is that even though all the actors which are engaged right now with the Taliban share this common concern of the challenges from ISKP, whether it's Russia or it's China or it's Iran or India in some form. So there is a commonality of concern which these actors share, but there's no commonality of approach that the actors have. So there is a lack of a regional approach because the problem is regional. Terrorism is beyond borders. It is not bound by borders. So it needs an approach which is at the regional level. It's a combined approach would help to, target this. Until we have this common approach, consensus on the approach to deal with this issue at the regional level, this problem is not going to diminish in any form. So future, to your answer, remains a challenge till we have a regional, cohesive, combined approach.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. That actually is very comprehensive in its own way. Uh, we will be moving on to the last question because we're nearing the end of the session. So the last question is aimed for Asif sir. Are you here?
Yeah, okay, I'm here.
Hi. Hi, sir. So the question that is posed towards you is so I'll just summarize it for you because it's sort of long. The question basically intends to ask if, due to the lack of economic activities and the lack of economic benefits of the resources in the Pashtun region to the local population, has it led to the rise of shadow economies and illicit trade, and how has it impacted the people directly?
As you know that, as I mentioned before, that it's not just like us, a little sum of our resources as grabbing or looted by the state. Like it's the overall hold of our resources in hand of Punjabi establishment or military establishment. So of course it have a very big impact on the life of local people, because if you see in Lucky Marwat, you see the ratio of cancer is very high. So this is like a very direct impact of the people, the life of the people, but we didn't get anything, didn't get any benefit from this. The same if you see Karak and also the near areas of Banu to the Lucky and Waziristan, there is also a lot of high ratio of cancers. So this is like a direct impact of the life of the local people. And in these areas, mostly people are very poor. Their standard of life is very poor, and even they are not able to get a proper treatment of this kind of disease. Also, lung disease are very normal in that areas. But what we get, even we don't have any hospital, not like a well qualified hospital where we can go for treatment. So these are the kind of exploitation of our resources, and also they have a direct impact on our lives.
Thank you so much for that answer, sir. That clarifies a lot. So with that, we come to the end of the session. Over to you, Levsa ma'am.
Thank you, Priyanshu. Now with this, I conclude our fifth session. I thank all of the speakers for their insightful presentation and detailed analysis of their respective topics. We have highlighted the political situation, the Pakistan-Afghanistan dynamic, the economic exploitation of the Pashtun area, and finally, the human rights abuse of the Pashtuns. I hope these discussions translate to something more productive. With this, we have to come to the end of our session. Thank you once again to everyone. Over to you, Priyanshu. Thank you.
Thank you.